In this video today, we're going to learn how to take a moving object and bounce it off of objects. In this case, off the edge of the screen. So let's get started. It's complicated. It's hard to think about. So as you go through this, don't get discouraged. Don't just try and get to the end. Stop, rewatch things. Make sure you're understanding why. Ask questions. It's really cool, but also really complicated. Okay. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to bounce a circle around the screen. So we're going to just grab a draw circle here. And I know I'm going to draw this circle over and over again the entire time. So I want to use a forever loop as well. I'm not using a repeat loop here because I want this to sit and bounce around and around and never stop. So I'm using a forever loop instead of a repeat a certain number of times loop. Now, when I use a forever loop, I have to remind myself, don't put stuff below the forever loop. It's never going to get below the forever loop. So make sure you keep everything inside this forever loop. All right, next thing we want to do is, we're going to need to change the X and Y positions of this block. So I'm going to create some new variables. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to save my project. So I'm going to click up here, and I'm going to call this boundary bounce video. Make sure you're saving it in a smart place. Yes. All right. And make sure your name is the first part of the file name always so that people know what's yours and what's not. So forever draw circle. And now I'm going to come down here to the make a variable. And I'm going to call the first one X position, submit. And I'm going to need a Y position as well. Again, I'm camel casing. I'm capitalizing the first letter in each of the words after the first word. And here X position and Y position. And I'm going to set the radius to 25 so we can see it a little better. And then let's just download and check to make sure we're doing stuff. And we're not. It's set to 0, so it's up in the left-hand corner. So that's good to check that. So I made two variables, so I'm going to grab two set my variable blocks. And I'm going to set the first one to X, the second one to Y. And I actually want to put this 240 tab 120. That puts it right in the middle of the screen. And I'm also going to add a fill color here just so we can see it a little better. Add a fill color. I'll leave it red because it's faster. And I'm going to actually set a pen color as well just to be consistent and call this one green. Okay, awesome. So I've got my first thing. If I download this and run it, it looks like it drew one circle, but the reality is it's drawing hundreds of circles right on top of each other as long as the program's running. So I'm going to stop the program to keep from wasting the battery because it's going to be drawing circles like a mad person. And now what I need to do is change my X and Y position. So I need to get this thing moving. So I'm going to come back down to the bottom here and grab change my variable block, make the first one X position, the second one Y position, and let's do this. So 1, it moves to the right for the X, and a 1 moves down the screen to the Y. So this should move to the right and down. So let's download this and run it. And sure enough, there it goes. Now right now I'm leaving a trail of circles behind, so I can go back and add in that black circle above here. But for right now, I think this will work. You can figure out that detail in the future if you want it to be just one thing moving around like a ball on the screen. I'm going to leave the trail behind. Okay, so now the next thing I want to do is bounce it. So notice that this is going on a forever. This ball on the screen has gone off the screen. It continues to be drawn way off the screen. Like right now, it's probably 100 feet away from me, still being drawn way over there somewhere. So again, I'm going to stop it to not burn up my batteries. The next thing I want to do is I want to figure out when it leaves the screen. So if the X position is greater than 480, it means it's leaving the right side of the screen. If the X position is less than 0, it's leaving the left-hand side of the screen. And if the Y is less than 0, it's leaving the top of the screen. And if the Y is greater than 240, it's leaving the bottom of the screen. So now I know what my conditions are that I want to set. So what I want to do is I want to run this code of making a circle only while all those things are true, while it's on the screen. So I'm going to come down here and grab I could do, like, you might want to think of doing an if block. So you say if basically the ball is on the screen, then run this code. The problem with an if statement, though, it's not a loop. It won't continue and repeat itself. It'll do it just once and then move down to the next code. So what we really want here is we want a while loop. We want it to be stuck looping this as long as those things are true. So I'm going to come down here and grab a while, and it's a loop. You can tell loop blocks because there's a little arrow showing you that it loops back up to the top. I'm going to grab this and put it around all three of these. And now I want to set a condition for the while. When I want this running is whenever the ball is still on the screen. So that means if the X position is greater than 0, it's on the screen still. And if the X position is less than 480, it's on the screen still. So if both of these things are true, I know it is on, let's see, less than 480. I know that it's on the screen horizontally. There's also some vertically. So if Y, in order to be on the screen, the Y position has to be greater than 0, and the Y position has to be less than 240. That puts it on the screen. So all four of these need to be true in order for the ball to be on the screen. If any of these are false, it means it's off the screen somewhere. So it looks like I need some AND statements. So AND, this one goes in there, and this one goes in there. And then I need an AND statement for these two. This one goes here, this one goes here. So this is my horizontal test. If the X position is between 0 and 480, it's on the screen. And this is my vertical test. If the Y is between 0 and 240, it's on the screen. Now I need to have these tests happen at the same time. So I need one more AND. I'm going to put that AND in the while loop. And I'm going to put this AND here. And I'm going to put this AND here. It does not matter which one goes first or second. In order for this loop to run, all four of these things have to be true. If any of these things are not true, the loop will skip this code and go to whatever's next inside the forever loop. All right, so let's take a look to see if this runs. We'll download it and we will run it. And it stops the ball. Boom, just like it's supposed to. Now we got to figure out how to bounce the ball. Before we even do that though, to me well, let me leave it at that right now. It doesn't look good right now because it's halfway off the screen. We'll deal with that last. It's easier to do at the end than it is right now. It gets pretty confusing when we do it right now. So what we're going to do is first just get this thing bouncing. So there are four things that could happen that could make it go off the screen. And here are four things that could happen. When those things happen, what we need to do is reverse the direction of that thing. So for example, if it goes off the screen on the left or right, that's the X position one, we need to change the X velocity from a positive number to a negative number. That'll reverse the direction of the change. So that if the change is a negative one, it moves it to the left, positive one is to the right. On the screen right now, we've gone off the Y, so we've gone down off the Y. So here we would want, right now we have a positive Y. To get it back on the screen, we need to make this change to a negative number instead of a positive. So that means that we've got to change these two values in the X positive and Y positive change, which means we need a new variable for that. And the variable we're going to call this is X velocity. Submit. And we're going to call the other one Y velocity. And the reason we're calling them velocity is because this number basically tells you how fast it's going. So for example, if I change this to 10, we download and run this, it's going across really, really fast. So these numbers we type in here are really how fast the thing moves across the screen. So we now have two new variables. Let's go ahead and do two new sets. So I'm going to put a set variable here and a set variable here for the starting conditions. We're going to call this, we're going to choose X velocity here and Y velocity here. We're going to make this, the X velocity into a +2. That'll make it move to the right. And we're going to turn the Y velocity off so it doesn't go up or down at all. And then we're going to put our X velocity in here where it says change x position, and then change y position by the y velocity. So now these are those numbers that go in here. Awesome. And so let's download this and see what it does. It should move to the right fairly fast. Boom, awesome. And then it stops when it hits the right-hand side like it's supposed to. Great. So now what we want to do is we want to bounce it. So if once it hits this right-hand side, it's going to leave this while loop. And then I need to do a test to see which side it's hit. So up here, I'm going to choose an if statement. I'm going to put that if statement in here. And I'm going to say if, so right now, if x is greater than 0, it's on the screen. So I'm going to say, well, what if it's not? What if it's, well, actually, we're leaving the right-hand side. So here the value was x greater than 480. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say, I'm going to do a greater than sign here. So if my x position is greater than 480, I know it's left the screen to the right. And that means I need to change the x velocity from a positive number to a negative number. But to do this, I want to create code that does it really well. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say set my x velocity to a new value. And that new value is going to be the old x velocity, whatever it was, times -1. So here I'm going to grab my x velocity and multiply it by -1. When I do this, I'm going to make a positive number negative. If this starts out negative, it's going to go positive. The idea is that it's going to change direction. And then I need to actually do a change. Because right now I'm off the screen, so I won't trigger this code again because I'm off the screen still. So I need to do a change in there. So I set, and then I'm going to change my x position to scooch it back onto the screen by my new x velocity. So I'm just going to put x velocity in there. And then let's see if this runs. It may or may not run. Okay, so it didn't bounce. Okay, so I think I got this all figured out. Here's the problem, is that when we hit this loop, when we get out of this loop, it happens when our value is equal to 480 sometimes. So really, we never entered this loop because our x position isn't greater than 480. It is equal to 480. So what I want to do here is I want to change this to if x position is greater than or equal to 480. Either of those will make it trigger. So I need an or command in here. I'm going to pull this one out. So this should say if the x position is greater than 480 or if the x position is equal to 480. So this will trigger if it is exactly on the edge as well. So 480 here. And then I'm going to drag this back in here. I'm going to say if x position is greater than 480 or if x position is equal to 480, then do this. Let's just download this and run it and see if we've got it. Bounce. Nice. Now we have our setup for everything else. Let's just test it with a few other things. Let's just change this to a 3 instead of a 2 just to make sure it still runs. And download and run it. Oh yeah, nice. Let's change it to a 30 just in case. Download. This should happen really fast. Okay, perfect. So it's bouncing. And now once we have it bouncing, this is really going to be the format for how we're going to bounce all of them. We've got it working. Before we do that, let's go ahead and start doing some comments because we're going to have to copy and paste a bunch of stuff. And we don't want to do this. We don't want to copy and paste before commenting. So I'm going to come up here and comment. I'm going to say, hey, this is sets the starting values. Sets, whoops, the starting, and maybe I'm going to do more than that. I'm going to say starting position. Well, I'm having a rough time typing. And then down here, I'm going to say sets the starting velocity in each direction. Okay, and then these two are kind of obvious what it is, and then here it's going to, let me grab a comment here, and this is draws circles as long as the circle is on the screen. Okay, so these are the conditions, these are the off-screen conditions. Oh no, sorry, these are the on-screen conditions. Greater than 0, less than 480, greater than 0, less than 240. And then this one right here, we're going to put a comment in. If the ball leaves the right side of the screen, reverses the velocity, and nudges the ball back on screen. And maybe I actually reverses the velocity. I'm going to separate these into 2 comments. That way I know which one which. And then, so this is X. And then down here, this is the one that actually nudges the ball back on screen. Awesome. Now all we need to do is just do some copying and pasting. So we need this condition to be set for the other X. So for when it's going less than 0, less than or equal to 0 for the X. So I'm going to do that one right now. So I'm going to grab this, pull this out. I want a less than or equal to 0. And this one's going to be or equal to 0. So I'm going to put my X position in here, less than 0 or equal to 0. It's still going to multiply the velocity by -1 because that will reverse the sign. So negative will become positive, positive become negative. And then my X position is going to nudge it back on X velocity. So that's my next condition. So I've got 2 conditions. Both the X's are set. And let's see if this bounces back and forth now. So I'm going to go ahead and hit download and run. This should bounce back and forth forever. And you can kind of see it overlapping and doing weird things on the screen. That's it bouncing back and forth over and over and over again. In fact, I'm going to come up here and slow this velocity down to say 6. Download that, run that real quick, just make sure. Awesome, you can see it now bouncing back and forth across the screen. So now all we need to do is add in these 2 things for the Y velocities. So Control C, Control V, or the vertical direction, I should say. We're going to put that right there. And it's these bottoms too, so I'm going to change all these X's to Y's. Change this X to Y. And then change this X velocity to Y velocity, this X position to Y position. Pull that out and change Y velocity here. Pull that X velocity out, put the Y velocity in there. So now I think I've done it for that one. This, remember, I need to be... Nope, that's right, that's right. That less than 0 stays in, but all of these X's come out and the Y's go in. So Y, Y, Y velocity, throw that X velocity out. If you miss one of these, it's never going to work. Make sure you're getting all of them. Put a Y velocity in there, and then Y position. And one last check, make sure everything's Y. So Y, 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 good. Y, 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 good. X, 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 and these all work because we just did those. All right, so now the next thing to do is just give ourselves some Y velocity. So I'm going to give myself a Y velocity of -1. It'll move up to start with. And I'm just going to download this and run it. Oh, did it get stuck? I'm going to do it as a -1.25. Let's see if I can just kick it off the edge a little bit. I'm not sure if it's stuck or if it's just repeating the loop. No, it's getting stuck on the bottom Y. Okay, so that just means that we need to go check out the bottom here. So, because I said 480. It'll probably come back on the screen. So the Y's need to be changed. So if Y is greater than or equal to 240, And then if y is less than or equal to 0, so that should be good, or equal to 240. Yeah, so that should push it back onto the screen. So let's try that. Download that and run it. Awesome, we've got it. We've nailed it. We've got a bouncing ball that bounces across the screen. That's fantastic. Now to make things a little more interesting, I'm going to actually change this up, and I'm going to set the x and y velocity to random numbers. So I'm going to say pick random number minus 10 to 10, and pick a random number for the y velocity of, I don't know, minus 10 to 10 as well. And I'm going to download this, and I'm going to run it. This way, every time, I'm going to get a different pattern that I run it. I'm just going to run it again, and now it does that pattern. I'm going to run it again, and now it does that pattern. So that's kind of super fun. So yeah, that's it. That's all it takes. Now, one thing I do notice is that the ball's not bouncing really well. When it bounces, right now it's bouncing when the center of the circle hits the side of the wall. I really want that to bounce earlier than that. I want it to bounce a radius away from the ball. Something else I've noticed here is that, yeah, so what I could do is create a variable called radius. I'll show you that real quick. If I really want it to bounce like it's supposed to, when the edge of the ball hits the wall, bounce, I'm going to grab my radius and punch it in here for the radius of the circle. And then I'm going to come back up here, and I'm going to set my radius, I definitely need to set my radius here, because otherwise it will be set to 0 automatically. And I'm going to set this down to 15, make it a little smaller. And then so what I could do is say whenever the x is greater than 0 plus the radius of the ball. So I would just grab a plus command here, and I would say 0 plus the radius. And here, whenever the 480, when it's 480 minus the radius. So really, if the radius is 15, I want this to bounce at like 465, because that's when the edge of the ball hits it, not just the center of the ball. So here I'd figure, okay, I need a minus in here, and it needs to be 480 minus the radius, whatever the radius is. And let me show you the difference between these. So I'm going to pull these random numbers out real quick and just slow this down to 1 and -1, and we'll see what happens when they hit the bounces. So I'm going to download this and run. So X is bouncing properly, Y isn't bouncing properly. You can see the difference in the bounce. Oops, I downloaded it twice. Boom. Uh-oh, I broke something in the X. X position, radius plus. Oh, I need to do the same thing down here. So I need to copy this one, Control C, Control V, and this one should be 480 minus radius in here as well. And that makes this one Control C, Control V, 0 plus radius goes here. Or equal to, and they need to go here as well. Control C, V, this, wherever 480 was, need to be this new value. And that one. And download that, that should work. Nice. Now notice that on the X's, it bounces when the edge gets there, but on the Y's, it goes halfway into it. Let's just kick up the radius here to see it more clearly. We're going to kick the radius up to 50. Download that and run it. See, in the X or in the Y, it goes halfway over. In the X, it actually bounces properly. So if you want to do that same work to here, just make sure that you're updating these two and figure out whether it's plus or minus for each of those, and then come down here and make sure you fix those two as well. You'll get a really nice looking bounce instead of that half overlapping bounce nonsense. Awesome, everybody. Have a great one. Thanks for hanging with me all this time, and I'm going to put these random numbers back in. And then download that and run it and see what it looks like. Whoa, that's fast. All right. Have a great day, everyone. I hope you had fun with this video. I sure did. I know it's super complicated, but hopefully worth it.